I talked with another guy here. He's like your equivalent here. He's like very into the science and the studies and whatnot. And he was a big fan of unilateral. He said anything you can do unilaterally, that's better. And I want to know your position on that.
I'd say that's correct when all else is truly equal, which is generally not the case. For example, if you're going to do a bent over row with a dumbbell instead of a barbell, then usually you're changing the grip, you're changing your body posture, and you're no longer hitting the erector spinae because you're now supported, assuming you're doing it with like on a bench or something.
Okay, got it.
So the logic is that the motor cortex, the part of our brain that controls movement, is not adapted well to symmetrical movements.
Okay.
We like to do symmetrical movements because we want symmetry in our bodies, but there is basically no natural movement that's actually symmetrical, like punching someone, throwing something, running, sprinting, jumping. They're all, in fact, one side is usually doing the opposite of the other side, like when you're running.
Right.
And because of that, we have what's called a bilateral deficit, which means that if you're trying to have two sides do the exact same thing at the same time, it sort of overloads the motor cortex, and you cannot produce as much force as you would when you do one in isolation and you combine it with one and the other. So that's also why if you do, for example, leg extensions, and after your set with 2 legs, you cut the weight in half, and then you could probably still do some repetitions. You can also do biceps curls, for example, with 2 dumbbells, and then when you fail, then drop 1 dumbbell, even if it's your weaker arm, you can still do some reps probably.
Wow, goddamn, that's a good insight. Okay.
Yeah, it doesn't make a huge difference because we have a few studies actually that looked at it directly, but at least one study found that you get more growth from unilateral than bilateral training.
I assume another benefit would be stability. You know, if you're doing one overhead shoulder, your stability is better in the rotator cuffs and whatnot. Is that?
Yeah, you get some accessory work in terms of stabilization requirements.
Huh.
That can also backfire though if it's too much.
Okay.
Like a dumbbell overhead press, I typically like to use a sort of Power Ranger stance. You're like really wide stance and then one arm out to the side. Because if you're going to do that with 40 kilograms and you try to stay super strict upright, then it becomes more of an oblique exercise than a shoulder exercise.
Yeah.